Welcome to Jiggle Club in conversation with Isabelle Goodwin. We are talking all things size inclusive dietetics and eating disorders. I just want to thank you all for being here tonight. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that we're meeting on today, wherever you may be joining from. I personally am on the Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung country here in Naarm/Melbourne, and I pay respects to elders past and present. Sovereignty was never ceded. Just a few housekeeping notes before we dive in. First of all, apologies for my voice. I'm so sorry. I sound horrific, so please put up with it. Please note this session will be recorded. If you prefer to stay anonymous, now's a great time to turn your camera off, change your Zoom name to whatever you want it to be. It's absolutely fine. We'll be talking openly about eating disorders and experiences within the healthcare system, so please take care of yourself as you listen. If anything feels like it's too much, or you don't want to hear it, or you feel you don't need to be here right now, you're very welcome to step away at any point. We'll also share a list of resources and support services at the end, and we will email them out to you with the recording. Nothing in this conversation tonight is intended as medical advice. It's a lived experience and professional perspective to inform, empower, and hopefully spark some self-compassion and curiosity. You can submit anonymous questions at any time via Slido. The wonderful Edie will pop the link in the chat now. She'll be here throughout the session if you need anything. If there's anything you want to say or anything you want to add while we're talking, pop it in the chat and Edie will chime in for you. Before we get into it, a quick intro from me. I'm Holly, the founder of Amplefolk and Jiggle Club. Jiggle Club is the community branch of Amplefolk and our love letter to the fat community. Jiggle Club has 5 pillars: advocacy, community, education, collaboration, and access. And it has the goal to help people in larger bodies live their best lives today in the body that they're in today. And I'm excited to be hosting this conversation tonight as part of our new webinar series. I'm joined by the wonderful Isabelle Goodwin, a size-inclusive dietitian who brings such a warm, thoughtful lens to this space. Welcome, Isabelle, and thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Holly. And I'm the same. My voice isn't great today either because I'm sick. I haven't had a cold for a few years, so it's about time, I suppose. So I'll rally through. But thank you. As Holly said, I'm an accredited practicing dietitian and a credentialed eating disorder clinician as well. I work with a lot of people who have binge eating disorder and undiagnosed eating disorders as well, who are seeking help. And I want to say that I'm not here to push my perspective on anything. It's really about meeting people where they're at, and of course we're not going into specific personal experiences today, but my goal is to always guide you through how to get to where you want to go, not where I think you should be. It's all about trying to make sure, what's your goal, how do we get there?
I love to hear it. That's so great. Now, before we dive in, let's do a tiny little icebreaker. I know they're sometimes a bit silly, but if you just want to pop an emoji in the chat that represents how your day has gone today, I wish there was one for like a lost voice, because that would be what I would put in. Maybe
There's a little one with a thermometer somewhere in its mouth.
I love it.
I'm trying to find that one. There we go.
Snoozy, yeah, love it. Awesome. All right. Now, let's set the scene with a little bit of myth busting. It's a big question and a big place to jump off, but are eating disorders something that only thin people experience? Many people watching tonight might wonder if what their experience counts as an eating disorder because they're not don't have anorexia nervosa. What are some signs that someone might be struggling with an eating disorder, even if they don't fit the stereotype on what we traditionally think of as someone with an eating disorder?
Yeah. And this is something that stops so many people from even thinking that they deserve help or even recognizing it as a problem. So when we think of eating disorder, often it is that stereotypical anorexia, thin, pale, female often, and specific sort of criteria for what that looks like. For most eating disorders, that's not the look. And I wanted to share some stats as well of what we know actually exists in our community. So this is from the Butterfly Foundation. So of people with an eating disorder, 3% have anorexia nervosa, 12% have bulimia nervosa, 47% have binge eating disorder, so just under half, and then 38% are other unspecified eating disorders that may not fit the specific criteria for the others, but we know that there's still something worth diagnosing or exploring, or is disordered in some way. 80% of all people with eating disorders will have a co-occurring mental health condition or PTSD.
Mm.
And I like to remind everyone that an eating disorder isn't an eating problem. It has a lot more to do with your mental health, and it reflects more of that. And that's why I work alongside psychologists a
Yeah,
lot of the time. And another sad fact is that less than a quarter of people with eating disorders will actually seek professional help. So those stats are largely just from that quarter. Because of stigma and shame, and feeling like you're the only one that's going through it, or that there's something wrong with you, there was a significant increase in eating disorder diagnosis post-COVID. So a lot of people sort of recognised it a lot more, and went forth and got diagnosed after that. So that's interesting as well.
it's great.
So signs for an eating disorder in any size body um, can still be a lot to do with over-evaluation of weight and shape, or lots of sort of body checking and those sorts of behaviours. There can still be a fear of weight gain or weight change. If you have nutritional deficiencies or unmet needs um, through nutritional needs, um, obsessing over food choices, or feeling a lot of guilt and shame about your eating, and constant sort of thoughts or push and pull about what you're meant to be doing, what the rules are. There might be compensation, so that would be purging or over exercising, or using certain medications to make up for eating. Um, that's a handful that often go alongside, that have nothing to do with the body number, or kilos or anything like that. It's more, all those things can be associated with an eating disorder. Um, Another thing that I see often is the trait of perfectionism. That's common in a lot of people that come up, or wanting everything to be as precise and rule-based as possible. Um, and often neurodivergence goes with that as well. So there's certain things related to focus, or rigid thinking that goes with eating disorders as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and I'll be sharing sort of a little bit of my, I guess, lived experience as we go as well, and very much an open book in that I've struggled with an eating disorder since I was a little girl, and I wasn't diagnosed until I was in my late 20s, and it was only because I'd been seeing a psychologist for a number of years, and it was that rumination and those repetitive thoughts that I'd sort of finally let her in on, and like she'd gained my trust enough that she recognized that that rumination maybe signals something else, and it kind of, brought everything up to the surface. So I think that for me, like the gateway to it all was recognizing that those thoughts, that food noise that people talk about, that was the first thing for me that really stuck out personally. I also wanted to ask you a follow-up question on body checking, because I think it's certainly something that I know a lot about and experience myself, but people might not have heard of that and what that actually means.
And sometimes we don't even recognize we're doing it. We all do it to some extent in some way. Um, so body checking is either looking at yourself a lot in a mirror or in reflective surfaces. So it might be sort of checking every time you're walking past a shop window, making sure that everything looks what you think it should look like. Or it might be um, excessively poking or pulling your body. Like, for example, a common one is like feeling around your stomach to try and see if it's changed or if it's different on that day. And that can reinforce a lot of the other damaging behaviors that go with an eating disorder. Um, a lot of the clients I see don't even realize that they're doing it. It's just become so automatic, or they've got to the point where they avoid mirrors or they avoid reflective surfaces, but they're still doing some sort of body checking, um, that's beyond just, do I have dirt on my face, or does my hair look okay? It's beyond that. Yeah.
Yeah, again, that rumination or the effect that it has on you. Um, and I think as well, something I really wanted to call out is that what's tricky, I think, as well for people in larger bodies with an eating disorder that's undiagnosed is that a lot of the practices that are disordered and need treatment are celebrated by society because usually, weight loss and, watching what you eat or exercising a lot, those things that we're rewarded by society for those things if we're in a larger body. And in fact, they may well be signaling that there is something disordered going on. Now, so speaking of that stigma, um, for people in larger bodies, getting help for a disordered eating or an eating disorder can be really complicated by weight stigma. Can you share just a little bit about what that might look like in a healthcare setting? How can people tell if a dietitian or a doctor or someone's going to offer them weight inclusive care, or the opposite, and what red flags they should be looking for?
Yeah, great. And it can be very tricky, if you're not fully aware of your own patterns or what you're really trying to find. It can be tricky to know if what you've experienced is inclusive or not. Um, but I want to reiterate that point that you said, Holly, about often if someone in a larger body is losing weight, they're congratulated, no matter what else is going on. It's unfortunately the society that we've developed over the last 100 years or so, and it makes eating disorder behaviours worse in a lot of people. Um, I think because of that, a lot of GPs don't actually realise that dieting and trying to change your body or trying to have weight loss as the goal is actually making that whole problem worse. So anytime we try and do that, our bodies will fight it. So bodies are great at trying to protect us and keeping us out of danger. So if we're throwing it in one direction, it's going to try and pull us right back again. And that's exactly what dieting does. Um, I think the research behind this to actually back this up is still sort of in the last 10, 20 years, which is still pretty fresh in the research world. So a lot of GPs are still catching up with that, and not realizing that the promoting weight loss drugs or surgery or the really extreme things, isn't a long-term approach for any of these issues and doesn't take into account eating disorders. Um, in saying that, I do think a lot of GPs struggle to navigate if someone comes to them who may have an eating disorder and say, I want to lose weight, I have to lose weight. GPs sort of like, oh, if they have that sort of inclusive approach, it can be hard to navigate for a GP that doesn't know what to do in that situation. So often I'm planting the seed in any letters I send to my GPs, or trying to educate them on how to open up that discussion rather than just going, oh, you want to lose weight? Sure, these are the options. Here we go. Actually asking, well, why do you want to lose weight? Why is that so important to you? And dig that up to actually find the deeper layers. Um, I think too, we've been told for a long time that chronic conditions like diabetes, high blood pressure, cholesterol, heart conditions, arthritis, a whole range of things are down to our weight. When actually we're finding that that's not the case, and it doesn't depend on weight or size. Um, but we do know that what increases your risk of health issues is an eating disorder. no matter what size body you're in. So it's flipping the script in that way. So trying to find someone who actually knows what they're doing in this space, who's giving weight inclusive care. Um, Look for someone who's not offering to fix everything. So it's not about finding a direct solution. This is it. This will fix it. Here we go. Because we don't work that way. We need to explore and trial and error, and it's a lot deeper than that. No, weight isn't a behavior, so it's not something we're in complete control of. Just like height isn't a behavior. It's something that has so many different things acting on it, that trying to control it alone, it's silly. As far as red flags go, for someone who's not inclusive, if they're insisting that you be weighed when you come in, so they need that number and they're not willing for you to say, actually, I don't want to do that, or I'm not comfortable, but they insist, that can be a sign that there's a bit of a disconnect. If in that clinic they're also advertising diets or weight loss medications or that sort of thing, there's a high chance that the culture in that clinic is going to be negative in the space. If they don't offer anything actionable beyond targeting weight loss, so if they see that still as the goal rather than offering other actionable things related to behaviors, and then if they don't refer on, so they offer that whole solution, they can do it all for you. If they're not sort of saying, hey, we need a team here, or referring on to other practitioners, that can be a bit of a red flag as well, because as we know, one practitioner doesn't know everything. It's best to have a team around you.
I think that was one of the biggest learnings I had when I first sought treatment. I didn't realize that there is a team that you build, and it's not just a GP or a therapist or whatever. It's different for everyone, but it's often your GP, a psychiatrist, a dietitian, a therapist or psychologist, sometimes an OT, sometimes an exercise physiologist, sometimes a physio. Like, it really does take a team to be able to treat an eating disorder. It's like a big bowl of spaghetti that is almost impossible to untangle, and one person can't do that. So I'm so glad that you mentioned that um, a team is so important. And yeah, and I think the other thing I wanted to say while you were talking, I thought of was, I think my favorite thing that I've learned personally is my go-to question now for doctors or medical professionals is, okay, say you spiel about weight loss and body size or whatever. What would you do if I was in a smaller body? What treatment would you offer me if I was in a smaller body? And I think that's an important thing to ask, but also think about yourself. If your friend in a smaller body, or your brother or your loved one was in a smaller body, what would you think that they might do, or the kind of help might they need? So yeah, just a little tip. So speaking of like opening up, or yeah, trying to sort of start this conversation around seeking treatment or seeking help with an eating disorder, opening up with these struggles can be really vulnerable. It's a very scary thing to do. You might even be like me and not even know that you've got a problem. You don't even realize, you're completely oblivious to it. And then there's also people who have tried to get help, but they've been dismissed, or they've been told, no, don't be ridiculous. What advice do you have for someone who wants to talk to a doctor or a health professional for the first time, or they're coming to this, hoping to get something out of it? What advice would you have for them?
If you can, suss them out. Go and find as much as you can on them. Stalk their Instagram if they have one. Go and find if there's someone else in that clinic that you know, quiz them about it. So try and suss them out a lot before you go in to see what they're about. You can look on, there's a few directories where you can find people who are trained in eating disorders and have that credential. So there's on the ANZ website, which I'll link to in the resources that you'll send out, that I'll send out, that Edie will send out at the end, about where you can find that and where you can find credentialed psychologists and dietitians. There's some other mental health professionals that can get that credential as well. If you're going into say with a GP and trying to talk through things, make a list of signs or symptoms that you've noticed in yourself so that when you get in there, you're not feeling flustered or pressured in any way. Or if you have any specific questions as well, or even what Holly said about that question that you can ask of, well, if I was in a smaller body, what advice would you give me for this problem?
Mm.
And that can stump some GPs because they're just not used to thinking that way. But it's a really important question to ask because it happens. All these different eating disorder signs and symptoms happen across the spectrum of weight.
Mm.
So asking that can sometimes flip the script a bit. So writing that down before you go so that if it is in a panic, you can sort of draw on that. And then be prepared to get a second, a third, a fourth opinion. Unfortunately, that's just, it's part of where we're at the moment.
Yeah.
That if at first someone dismisses you, it's not because you've done anything wrong. It
Mm.
might just be that you haven't found the one
What
yet.
to say, I guess, when a doctor plainly says to you, you just need to lose weight. One of the big things that is not talked about anywhere near enough is the eating disorder care plan and what that sort of, for lack of a better term, unlocks into.